So you got your 2 tires anyway then? You stripped a couple off a parked car? Well, to tell the truth, Lou, I took 4. I wasn't meaning to, but I knew where I could turn a couple real quick. Sure. This gal was kind of hard to get, and you wanted to be sure of getting over with her. A really hot babe, huh? Wow. You know what I mean, Lou? One of those gals that makes you want to take your shoes off and wade around in her? I laughed again, and he laughed. I know who owned the car. As soon as I get squared away, I'll send him the money for those tires. Don't worry about it. Are we, can I... you'll be leaving in a few minutes, Johnny. Just a few formalities to take care of first. Boy, well, I'd be glad to get out of here. Gosh, Lou, I don't know how people stand it. It'd drive anyone crazy. It does drive them crazy. Now, maybe you better lie down a while, Johnny. Just sort of stretch out on the bunk. I got a little more talking to do. Well, but... He turned slowly and tried to see my face. You'd better do that. The air gets kind of bad with both of us sitting up. Oh, yeah. And he lay down. He sighed deeply. Say, this feels pretty good. Ain't it funny, Lou, what a difference it makes having someone to talk to? Someone that likes you and understands you? Yes, it makes a lot of difference. You didn't tell him that you got that 20 from me, Johnny? Hell no. What do you think I am anyway? Piss on those guys. Why didn't you tell him? Well, I figured, oh, you know, Lou, Elmer got around in some kind of funny places, and I thought maybe, well, I know you don't make a hell of a lot of dough, and if someone should slip you a little tip, why, I don't take bribes, Johnny. Now, who said anything about bribes? I just wasn't going to let him hit you cold with it until you figured out, until you remembered where you found it. I didn't say anything for a minute. I just sat there thinking about him, this kid that everyone said was no good, and a few other people I knew. Finally, I said, I wish you hadn't have done it, Johnny. It was the wrong thing to do. You mean they'll be sore? To hell with them. They don't mean anything to me, but you're a good Joe. Am I? How do you know I am, Johnny? I mean, how can a man ever really know anything? We're living in a funny world, kid. A screwed up, bitched up world, and I'm afraid it's going to stay that way. I killed her, Johnny. I killed both of them. And don't say I couldn't have, that I'm not the kind of guy, because you don't know. He started to rise up on his elbow, and then he lay back again. I bet you had good reason, Lou. I bet they had it coming. No one has it coming to them, but I had reason, yes. Dimly in the distance, like a ghost hooting, I heard the refinery whistles blowing for the swing shifts, and I could picture the workmen plodding to their jobs and the other shifts plodding out, driving home and drinking beer and watching television and diddling their wives, just as if nothing was happening. Just as if a kid wasn't dying and a man, part of a man, was dying with him. Lou? Yes, Johnny. You mean I should take the rap for you? No. Yes. I don't think I can, Lou. I mean, oh, Jesus, I can't. I eased him back on the bunk, and I ruffled his hair and chucked him gently under the chin, tilting it back. There's a time of peace and a time of war, a time to sow and a time to reap, a time to live and a time to die. Lou, this hurts me, Johnny, worse than it does you, and I knifed my hand across his windpipe. Then I reached down for his belt. I pounded on the door, and after a minute the turnkey came. He cracked the door open a little, and I slid out, and he slammed it again. They give you any trouble, Lou? No, he was real peaceful. I think we've broken the case. I went back upstairs and told Howard I'd had a long talk with Johnny and that I thought he'd come through all right. Yeah, you just leave him alone for an hour or so. If I haven't made him see the light, then he just ain't gonna see it. Certainly, Lou. I know your reputation. Do you want me to call you after I see him? Well, I wish you would. I'm kind of curious to know if he talks. I've loafed around the streets sometimes, leaned against a storefront with my hat pushed back and one boot hooked back around the other. Hell, you've probably seen me if you've ever been out this way. I've stood like that, looking nice and friendly and stupid like I wouldn't piss if my pants was on fire, and all the time I'm laughing myself sick inside, just watching the people. You know what I mean? The couples, the men and the wives you see walking along together, the tall, fat woman and the short, scrawny men, the teensy little women and the big, fat guys, the dames with their lantern jaws and the men with no chins, the bow-legged wonders and the knock-kneed miracles. I've laughed inside, that is, until my guts ached. And I guess the people, those mismatched people, aren't something to laugh about. I mean, they're really tragical. They're not stupid, no more than the average anyway. They've not tied up together just to give jokers like me a bang. The truth is that life has played a hell of a trick on them. There was a time, just for a few minutes maybe, when all their differences seemed to vanish, and they were just what each other wanted. They had that time, those few minutes, and they never had any other. But while it lasted, everything seemed the same as usual. The shades were drawn, and the bathroom door was open a little just to let a little light in, and she was sprawled out on her stomach asleep. Everything was the same. But it wasn't. It was one of those times. She woke up while I was undressing. She sat up, rubbing at her eyes, starting to say something sharp, but somehow she smiled instead, and I smiled back at her. I scooped her up in my arms, and I sat down on the bed, and I held her. I kissed her, and her mouth opened a little, and her arms locked around my neck. That's the way it started. That's the way it went. Until finally we were stretched out side by side, her arm around my hips and mine around hers, limp, almost breathless. And still we wanted each other, wanted something. She burrowed her head against my shoulder, and it was nice.
Did I know something?
Yeah, honey?
About that that operation.
What? What do you think you know?
It was after after Mike.
What about Mike?
Darling, I don't care. But it was then, wasn't it? Your father got worried and...
I let my breath out slowly. Almost any other night I could have enjoyed wringing her neck, but this was one time when I hadn't felt that way. Yeah, it was about that time, as I recollect, but I don't know as that had anything to do with it.
Honey?
The phone rang. It was Howard Hendricks. Lou, kid, you did it. You really softened him up. He signed a confession. Better than that, boy. He hanged himself. Did it with his belt. Now, that proves he was guilty without us having to screw around before a judge and put the taxpayers to a lot of expense and all that crap. He tried to get the gloat out of his voice. Now, Lou, I want you to promise me that you won't take this the wrong way. You mustn't get down about it. A person like that don't deserve to live. He's a lot better off dead than he is alive. I guess you're right at that. I got rid of him and hung up. And right away the phone rang again. This time it was Chester Conway calling from Fort Worth. Great work, Lou. Guess you know what this means to me. Guess I made a mistake about... Yes? Nothing. Don't matter now. See you, boy. I hung up again, and the phone rang a third time. Bob Maples. His voice came over the wire, thin and shaky. I know how much you thought of that boy, Lou. I know you just about as soon it'd happen to yourself. As soon? Yeah, Bob. I just about would have. You want to come over and set a spell, Lou? I ain't supposed to be up, or I'd offer to come over there. Well, I reckon not, Bob, but thanks. Amy'd been taking in everything. I hung up and slumped down on the bed, and she sat up beside me.
For heaven's sakes, what was all that about, Lou?
I told her. Not the truth, of course, but what was supposed to be the truth.
Oh, darling, that's wonderful. My Lou solving the case. Will you get a reward?
Why should I? Think all the fun I had.
Oh, well...
She drew away a little, and I thought she was going to pop off, and I reckon she wanted to, but she wanted something else worse.
I'm sorry, Lou. You have every right to be angry with me.
She lay back down again, and turning on her stomach, spreading her arms and legs. She stretched out, waiting, and whispered,
Very, very angry.
Sure, I know. Tell me something else. Tell a hophead he shouldn't take dope. Tell him it'll kill him and see if he stops. She got her money's worth. It was going to cost her plenty, and I gave her value received. Honest Lou, that was me. Let Lou titillate your tale. I guess I must have got to sweating with all that exercise, and not having any clothes on, I caught a hell of a cold. I had to stay in bed for a week. It was kind of a break for me. I didn't have to talk to a lot of people and have them asking damn fool questions and slapping me on the back, and I didn't have to go to Johnny Pappas's funeral. I didn't have to call on his folks like I'd have felt I had to do ordinarily. A couple of the boys from the office dropped by to say hello, and Bob Maples came in a time or two. He was still looking pretty peaked, seemed to have aged about 10 years. We kept off the subject of Johnny, and the visits went off pretty well. Only one thing came up that kind of worried me for a while. Lou, why in the hell don't you get out of this town? Get out? We'd just been sitting there quietly smoking and passing a word now and then, and suddenly he comes out with this. Well, why should I get out? Why have you ever stayed here this long? Why'd you ever want to wear a badge? If I know anything about you, you don't like the work. You never have liked it. He wasn't exactly right about that, but I knew what he meant. Your dad could have sent you off to school. You could have been a practicing doctor by this time. Well, they'd been that trouble with Mike, and Dad would have been all alone, and I guess my mind just didn't run to medicine, Bob. Well, there's other things you could do. You like a lot of being broke, son. You could get a little fortune for this property. Yeah, but, well, to tell the truth, Bob, I have kind of thought about pulling up stakes, but Amy don't want to. I haven't asked her, but I don't reckon she would. That's sure too bad. I don't suppose that you'd... No, you wouldn't do that. I don't expect no man in his right mind would ever give up Amy. I nodded a little, like I was agreeing that I couldn't give her up, and even with the way I felt about her, the nod came easy. Hating her didn't keep me from being proud of her. You trying to get rid of me, Bob? Yeah, kind of looks as though, don't it? Guess I did too much thinking while I was lying around the house. I got to thinking about how riled I get sometimes, having to give in to things I don't like, and hell, I ain't really fit to do much but what I'm doing. I thought how much harder it must be on a man like you. Fact is, I reckon you started me thinking that way, Lou. You kind of brought it on yourself. I looked blank, and then I grinned. Wow, I didn't mean anything by it. It's just a way of joking. Sure. I just thought maybe you was getting kind of saddle-galled. And, Bob, what did Conway say to you there in Fort Worth? Oh, hell. He stood up, slapping his hat against his pants. Can't even recollect what it was now. Well, I guess I'd better be... He said it did something that you didn't like a little bit. You reckon he did, huh? He chuckled and he put on his hat. Forget it, Lou. It wasn't nothing important. It don't matter no more anyways. He left, and like I said, I was kind of worried for a while, but after I'd had time to think, it looked like things were working out pretty good. I was willing to leave Central City. I'd been thinking about leaving, but I thought too much of Amy to go against her wishes. If something should happen to her, though, and something was going to happen, well, of course, I wouldn't want to hang around the old familiar scenes anymore. It'd be more than a soft-hearted guy like me could stand. So I'd leave, and no one would think anything of it. Amy came to see me every day, in the morning for a few minutes on her way to school and again at night. She hardly nagged about anything that I remember. She didn't give me any trouble at all. She was all sort of blushy and shy. 2 or 3 nights she drew the bathtub full of warm water and sat in it and soaked, and I'd sit and watch her and think how much she looked like her. And afterwards she'd lie in my arms and just lie there, because that was about all either of us was up to. I could almost fool myself into thinking it was her, but it wasn't. And for that matter, it wouldn't have made any difference if it had been. I'd just be right back where I started. I'd have to kill her a second time. I was glad Amy didn't bring up the subject of marriage. She was afraid of starting a quarrel, I guess. I'd already been right in the middle of 3 deaths, and a 4th coming right on top of them might look kind of funny. It was too soon for it. Anyway, I hadn't figured out a good, safe way of killing her. You see why I had to kill her, I reckon. Or do you? It was like this. There wasn't any evidence against me. And even if there was some, I'd be a mighty hard man to stick. Why, hell, they'd been seeing Lou Ford around for years, and no one could tell them that good old Lou would... Yeah, but good old Lou could do it. Lou could convict himself. All he had to do was skip out on a girl who knew just about everything about him that there was to know, who even without that one wild night could probably have pieced some plenty ugly stuff together, and that would be the end of Lou. Everything would fall into place right back to the time when Mike and I was kids. As things stood now, she wouldn't let herself think things through. I was going to be her husband, so everything was all right. But if I ran out on her, well, that mental block she'd set up would disappear. She'd have to answer quick, and she wouldn't keep it to herself, because if she couldn't have me, no one else would. Yeah, she and Joyce seemed pretty much alike. How long should I wait? That was the question. How long was it safe? Amy wasn't crowding me any. I figured I could stall her off on marriage indefinitely, but, well, it wasn't just Amy. There wasn't anything I could put my finger on, but I had the feeling that things was closing in on me, and I couldn't talk myself out of it. Every day that passed, the feeling grew stronger. Conway hadn't come to see me or spoken to me, but that didn't necessarily mean anything. He was the kind of guy that'd drop you when he got a favor and then pick you up again when he needed another one. He'd gone back to Fort Worth, and he hadn't returned, but that was all right, too. Conway Construction had big offices in Fort Worth. He always spent a lot of time there. Bob Maples? Yeah, I'd study him as the days drifted by, and I couldn't see anything to fret about. He looked pretty old and sick, but he was old, and he'd been sick. He didn't have too much to say to me, but what he did have was polite and friendly. And he'd never been what you'd call really talky. Howard Hendricks? Well, something sure enough was eating on Howard. I'd run into Howard the first day I was up after my sick spell. He'd been coming up the steps of the courthouse just as I was heading down them to lunch. He nodded, not quite looking at me, and mumbled out, "How are you, Lou?" I stopped and said I was feeling a lot better. Still felt pretty weak, but couldn't really complain. "Yeah, you know how it is, Howard. It isn't the flu so much as the after effects." "So I've heard. Gotta run. See ya." He turned and went up the steps, his shoulders sagging a little, but his feet moving firm and steady. And we hadn't passed a word between us since then. He kept out of my way when he saw me coming, and I did him the same favor. So there was something wrong there, but what else could I expect? What was there to worry about? Elections were coming up in the fall, and he'd be running as usual. Breaking the Conway case would be a big help to him, and he'd want to talk it up, but he'd feel awkward about doing it. He'd have to cut me out of the credit, and he figured I'd be sore, so he was jumping the gun on me. There was nothing really out of the way then, or nothing with him, or Sheriff Bob, or Conway. There wasn't a thing. But the feeling kept getting stronger. It got stronger and stronger. I'd been keeping away from the Greeks. I'd even stayed off the street where his restaurant was, but one day some just seemed to pull the wheels of my car in that direction, and I found myself stopping in front of it. The windows were all soaped over and the doors were closed, but it seemed like I could hear banging and clattering. There was a place on one of the double doors where the soap had been scraped away, and I sheltered my eyes with my hands and peered through. The door opened suddenly, and the Greek stepped out. I am sorry, Officer Ford. I cannot serve you. We are not open for business. I stammered that I didn't want anything. I just thought I'd drop by to... Yes? Well, I wanted to see you. I wanted to see you the night that it happened. It hasn't been off my mind since. But, well, I couldn't face you. There wasn't anything I could say or do. Because if there'd been anything, well, it wouldn't have happened in the first place. It was the truth. And God, what a wonderful thing truth is. He looked at me in a way I didn't quite like to name, and then he looked kind of baffled. He stared down at the sidewalk. I'm glad you come by, Lou. I have felt at times that he regarded you as his one true friend. Well, I aimed to be his friend. Somehow I slipped up. I couldn't help him when he needed help worst. But I want you to know one thing, Max. I didn't hurt. No, you need not tell me that, Lou. I do not know why. I wished I could leave, but I didn't quite know how to go about it. Finally, I said I was sorry that he was closing the restaurant. No, I'm not closing it. I am remodeling it. I am putting in leather booths and an inlaid floor and air conditioning. Johnny would have liked those things. Many times he suggested them, and I suggested he was hardly fitted to give me advice. But now, well, it will be as he wanted. It is all that can be done. I shook my head again. I want to ask you a question, Lou. I want you to answer it. I want the absolute truth. Who else visited Johnny's cell after you left? Well, there was Howard, the county attorney. Oh, I know that. He made the discovery. And a deputy sheriff and the jailer were with him. Who else? My heart gave a little jump. But no, it was no good. I couldn't do that. I don't have any idea, Max. I wasn't there. But I can tell you that you're on the wrong track. Now, I've known all those boys for years. They wouldn't do a thing like that any more than I would. There was the truth again. He had to see it. Well, we talk again, Lou. You bet we will, Max. I drove out on Derrick Road, 5 miles out. I pulled the car off the shoulder up at the crest of the little hill, and I sat there looking down through the blackjacks. But I didn't see a thing. I didn't see the blackjacks. About 5 minutes after I had stopped, a car drew up behind mine, and Joe Rothman got out of it and plodded along the shoulder and looked at me. Nice view here. Mind if I join you? Thanks, I knew you wouldn't. He opened the door and slid into the seat beside me. Come out this way often, Lou? Oh, whenever I feel like it. Well, it's a nice view, all right. I thought that must be the attraction. After all, what else is there to see aside from those blackjacks and that little white cottage? The murder cottage, I believe they call it. What do you want? How many times were you there, Lou? How many times did you lay her? I was there quite a few times. I had reason to be, and I'm not so hard up for it that I have to lay whores. No, I don't suppose you would be. He shook tobacco into paper and twirled it and ran his tongue across it. He stuck it in the corner of his mouth, and he seemed to forget about it. You were talking with Max Pappas? He was resigned to Johnny's suicide? He had accepted it as suicide? Well, I can't say he was resigned to it. He was wondering whether if someone was in the cell after I left, and Lou? And? Well, I told him no, that it couldn't have been that way. None of the boys would be up to doing such a thing. Which settles that, or does it? What are you driving at? His voice went smooth again. Did you notice the remodeling he's doing? Do you know how much that'll cost? Right around $12,000. Where do you suppose he got that kind of money? Well, maybe he had it saved, Max Pappas. Or maybe he borrowed it without collateral. Well, I don't know. Let me make a suggestion. Someone gave it to him. A wealthy acquaintance, we'll say, who felt he owed it to him. I shrugged, pushed my hat back because my forehead was sweating, but I was feeling cold inside. So cold inside. Conway Construction is handling the job, Lou. Doesn't it strike you as rather odd that he'd do a job for a man whose son killed his son? Well, there ain't many jobs that he don't handle. Anyway, it's a company, not him. More than likely, he doesn't even know about it. It's a turnkey job. Conway's jobbing all the materials, dealing with the supply houses, paying off the men. No one's seen a nickel coming from Pappas. So what? Conway takes all the turnkey stuff he can get. He cuts a half a dozen profits that way instead of one. But the money, Lou, that still doesn't explain about the money. Well, he could have had it, a big enough part anyway, so they'd wait on the rest. It didn't need to be in a bank. I mean, he could have had it salted away around the house. Yeah, I suppose so. He flicked his cigarette away and fumbled for his tobacco and papers and began rolling another one. Did you get out to the cemetery, Lou? Out to Johnny's grave? No, and I've got to do that, too. I'm ashamed I haven't done it before. You mean that, don't you? Who are you to ask that? I don't want any credit for it, but I'm the only man in Central City that ever tried to help that kid. I liked him. I understood him. I know. I was just going to say that Johnny's buried in sacred ground. You know what that means, Lou? Well, the church didn't call it suicide. And the answer, Lou? Do you have an answer? Oh, he was so awful young. I mean, maybe the church figured he'd been faulted enough and tried to give him a break. Maybe. Maybe. One more thing, Lou. The big thing. On the Sunday night that Elmer and the late occupant of yon cottage got it, one of my carpenters went to the last show at the Palace. He parked his car around in back, and now get this, Lou, at 9:30. When he came out, all 4 of his tires were gone. I waited, and everything got pretty quiet. That's sure too bad. All 4 tires, huh? Too bad? You mean it's funny, don't you, Lou? Well, it is, kind of. I didn't hear anything about it at the office. It'd be still funnier if you had, Lou, because he didn't report the theft. For some reason, you fellas down at the office don't take much interest in us fellas down at the Labor Temple, unless you find us on a picket line. Oh, I can't hardly help. Never mind, Lou. The man didn't report the theft, but he did mention it to some of the boys when the carpenters held their regular Tuesday night meeting. And one of them, as it turned out, had bought 2 of the tires from Johnny Pappas. I didn't say anything. These lads went calling on Johnny. He wasn't at home, and he wasn't at Murphy's filling station. In fact, he wasn't anywhere about that time. He was swinging by his belt from the window bars of the courthouse cooler. But his hot rod was at the station, and the remaining 2 stolen tires were on it. They stripped them off, and that ended the matter. But there's been talk about it, Lou. There's been talk, even though, apparently, no one has attached any great significance to the event. Well, why should they, Joe? I guess I don't get you. Those tires were stolen after 9:30 on the night of Elmer and his lady friend's demise. Assuming that Johnny didn't go to work on them the moment the owner parked, or even assuming that he did, we're driven to the inevitable conclusion that he was engaged until well after 10 o'clock. He could not, in other words, have had any part in the horrible happenings behind yonder blackjacks. Well, I don't see why not. You don't? His eyes widened. Well, Johnny ran with a pretty wild crowd. I figure one of his buddies stole those tires and gave them to him to peddle. He was in a good position to get rid of them there at the station. Slim Murphy wouldn't have interfered. Why, hell, Joe, if he'd had to have an alibi for the time for the murders, well, he'd have told me so, wouldn't he? I mean, he wouldn't have hanged himself. He liked you, Lou. He trusted you. Yeah, for damn good reasons. He knew I was his friend. Fine, Lou. Perfect. Every brick is laid straight, and the bricklayer is an honest, upstanding mechanic. Still, I can't help wondering about his handiwork and him. I can't help wondering why he feels the need to defend his structure of perhapses and maybes. I can't see why he didn't tell a certain labor skate to get the hell on with his business. So there it was. But where was he? He nodded as though I'd ask him the question. You're going to have to move, Lou. Fast, before you upset yourself. I was kind of figuring on leaving town. I mean, I haven't done anything, but no, certainly you haven't. Otherwise, I wouldn't feel free to yank you from the clutches of your persecutors, your would-be persecutors, I should say. Or you think maybe... I think you might have a little trouble in leaving. I think it's so strongly that I'm getting in touch with a friend of mine, one of the best criminal lawyers in the country. You've probably heard of him, Billy Boy Walker. I did Billy Boy Walker a favor one time, and he has a long memory for favors. I had heard of Billy Boy Walker. He was plenty good. It worried me that Rothman thought I needed that kind of help. And it made me wonder all over again just what did Rothman stand to lose if the law started asking me questions. Then I realized that my first conversation with Rothman should ever come out. Any jury in the land had figured that he'd sicked me on the late Elmer Conway. In other words, Rothman was saving two necks, his and mine, with one lawyer. Perhaps you won't need him, but it's best to have him alerted. How soon can you leave town? I hesitated. Amy, how was I going to do it? I can't do it right away. Well, I'll have to kind of drop a hint or two around that I've been thinking about leaving, and then so work up to it gradually. I mean, it'd look pretty funny if... Yeah. But if they know you're getting ready to jump, they're apt to close in all the faster. Still, I can't see your point. Well, what can they do? If they did close in, they'd be doing it already. I mean, not that I have done it. Don't bother. Don't say it again. Just move. It shouldn't take you more than a couple of weeks at the outside. 2 weeks. 2 weeks more for Amy. Well, all right, Joe, and thanks for what? For you? I haven't done a thing. He got out and went back to his car. I waited until he'd headed back toward Central City, and then I started back. I drove slowly, thinking. I knew I had to kill Amy. I could put the reason into words, but every time I thought about it, I had to stop and think why again. I'd been doing something, reading a book or something, or maybe I'd be with her, and all of a sudden it would come over me that I was going to kill her, and the idea seemed so crazy I'd almost laugh out loud. Then I'd start thinking, and I'd see why it had to be done. But I still didn't know how to go about it. I couldn't figure out a way that would leave me even reasonably in the clear, and I sure had to be on this one. Finally it came to me. It happened 3 days after my talk with Rothman. It was a payday Saturday, and I should have been working, but I stayed in the house all day with the shades drawn, wandering from room to room. When night came, I was sitting in Dad's office with nothing on but a little desk light, and I heard these footsteps moving lightly across the porch and the sound of the screen door opening. It was way too early for Amy, but I wasn't jittered any. I'd had people walk in before like this. I stepped to the door of the office just as he came into the hall. I'm sorry, stranger. The doctor doesn't practice anymore. The sign's there just for sentimental reasons. That's okay, Bud. He walked right toward me, and I had to move back. It's just a little burn. Yeah, well, I don't... A cigar burn. He held out his hand, palm up. At last, I recognized him. He sat down in Dad's big leather chair, grinning at me. He brushed his hand across the arm, knocking off the coffee cup and the saucer that I'd left there. I'm thirsty. You got some whiskey around? I got a phone around, and the jail's about 6 blocks away. Now drag your ass out of here before you find yourself in it. You want to use that phone? Go right ahead, Bud. I started to. I figured he'd be afraid to go through with it, and if he did, well, my word still was better than any bum's. No one had anything on me. I was still Lou Ford. Go ahead, Bud, but it'll cost you, and it won't be just the price of a burned hand. I held on to the phone, but I didn't lift the receiver. Go on. Let's have it. I got interested in you, Bud. I spent a year stretch on the Houston Pea Farm. I've seen a couple of guys like you there, and I figured it might pay to watch you a little. So I followed you that night. I heard some of the talk you had with that labor fella. Yeah, I reckon that meant a hell of a lot to you, didn't it? It hardly meant a thing to me. Fact is, it didn't mean much to me a couple of nights later when you came up that old farmhouse where I was shacked up, and then cut cross prairie to that little white house. That didn't mean much neither, then. You say you had some whiskey, Bud? I went into the laboratory and got a pint of old prescription liquor from the store's cabinet. I brought it back with a glass. He opened it and poured the glass half full. Have one, on the house. He handed the drink to me. I drank it. I needed it. He took a swig from the bottle and smacked his lips. No, sir. Didn't mean a thing. I couldn't stick around to figure it out. I hiked out of there early Monday morning. I hit up the pipeline for a job. They put me up with a crew right away over on the Pecos. So far out I couldn't make it to town on my first payday. But this payday was different. I got to come in. I caught up on the news, Bud. And those things that you've done and said, it meant plenty. I nodded. I felt kind of glad. It was out of my hands now. The pieces were all falling into place. I knew I had to do it and how I was going to do it. He took another swallow of the whiskey. Now, I'm an understanding man, Bud, but the law ain't helped me none, and I ain't helping it none, unless I have to. What do you figure it's worth to you to go on living? I shook my head. I had to go slow. I couldn't give in too easily. I haven't got much money, just what I make on my job. You got this place. Must be worth a pretty tidy sum, too. Yeah, hell, it's all I've got. If I'm not going to have a window left to throw it out of, there's not much percentage in keeping you quiet. You might change your mind about that, Bud. Anyway, it's just not practical to sell it. People would wonder what I'd done with the money. I'd have to account for it to the government and pay taxes on it. And for that matter, I reckon you're in kind of a hurry. You reckon right, Bud. Well, it would take quite a while to get rid of the place like this. I'd want to sell it to a doctor, someone who'd pay for my dad's practice and equipment. He studied me suspiciously, trying to figure out how much, if any, I was stringing him. As a matter of fact, I wasn't lying more than a little bit. You reckon you could swing a loan on it? Well, I'd sure hate to do that. That ain't what I ask you, Bud. I probably wouldn't get more than $5,000 after they took out interest and brokerage fees, and I'd have to turn right around and swing another loan to pay off the first one. And now, if you just give me 4 or 5 months to find someone who... How long it take you to swing this loan? A week? Well, I might have to give her a little longer than that. I wanted to give her longer. I'd say 2 weeks, but I'd sure hate 5,000. 2 weeks from tonight. I scowled. Well, all right. He tucked the whiskey into his hip pocket and stood up. Okay, Bud. I'm going back out to the pipeline tonight, but don't get no notions of running out on me. How the hell could I? You think I'm crazy? You ask unpleasant questions, Bud. You may get unpleasant answers. Just be here with that $5,000 2 weeks from tonight, and there won't be no trouble. Don't worry. You'll get it. He stood at the front door a moment, then he slipped out and disappeared into the trees on the lawn. I grinned, feeling a little sorry for him. It was funny the way these people kept asking for it. Why did they all have to come to me to get killed? I cleaned up the broken dishes in the office. I went upstairs and lay down and waited for Amy. I didn't have to wait long. I could sense a difference, the stiffness that comes when you want to say something and don't know how to begin. Or maybe we sensed it in each other. We both came out with it together.
Lou,
Amy, why don't we...
You do want to, don't you, darling? Truly?
Didn't I just start to ask you?
When do you?
Well, I was thinking a couple of weeks.
Darling.
She kissed me. Then there was just a little more.
What are you thinking about, darling?
Well, I was thinking we've always had to do like people expected us to. What were you thinking about?
Well?
Well?
Why don't we elope?
We had 2 weeks, and they were pretty good ones. Because for the first time, I don't remember when my mind was really free. The end was coming, and everything would be over soon. I was with her every night. I took her everywhere she wanted to go, did everything she wanted to do. Most of the time, we just stayed at my house, both of us sitting in Dad's big old chair, or stretched out upstairs, face to face, holding each other. We'd lie there for hours, not speaking for an hour at a time. I'd lie there listening to the ticking of the clock, listening to her heart beat with it, and I'd wonder why it had to tick so fast. I'd wonder why. And it was hard to wake up and go to sleep and then to go back into the nightmare where I could remember. I think she must have had a pretty good time those 2 weeks, better than any she'd ever had before. I went to work every day of those 2 weeks. It wasn't easy. I didn't want to face anyone. I wanted to stay in the house with the shades drawn, and I knew I couldn't do that. They suspected me, and I'd let 'em know that I knew, but there wasn't a thing on my conscience. I wasn't afraid of a thing. And I proved that there wasn't by going down, because how could a man who'd done what they thought I had go right on about his business and look people in the eye? I was sore, sure. My feelings were hurt, but I wasn't afraid, and I proved it. Most of the time, at first anyway, I wasn't given much to do. And believe me, that was hard, standing around, pretending like I didn't notice or give a damn. And when I did get a little job, serving a warrant or something like that, there was always a reason for another deputy to go along with me. He'd be embarrassed and puzzled because, of course, they were keeping the secret at the top between Hendricks and Conway and Bob Maples. He'd wonder what was up, but he couldn't ask. I was coming back from lunch one day when the hall floors had just been oiled, and they didn't make much noise when you stepped on them, and when you had to pick your way along, they didn't make any at all. Deputy Jeff Plummer and Sheriff Bob were talking, and they didn't hear me coming, so I stopped just short of the door and listened. Plummer didn't like telling Bob off, and he didn't sound like he was, just easygoing and casual, but he sure as hell was doing it. And I didn't know whether I felt better or not. I went on about my business every day, and things were easier for me in a sense, 'cause people acted easier around me, and twice as hard in another way. Because the folks that trust you just won't hear no bad about you, nor even think it. Those are the ones that are hard to fool. You can't put your heart in your job. Chester Conway'd been staying in Fort Worth, but he came back in town one day for a few hours, and I made it my business to hear about it. I was driving by his offices real slow around 2 in the afternoon when he came barging out looking for a taxi, and before he knew what was happening, I had him in charge. I hopped out, took his briefcase away from him, and hustled him into my car. He was too set back to talk, and he didn't have time to say anything. After we were headed for the airport, he didn't get a chance 'cause I was doing all the talking. "I've been hoping to run into you, Mr. Conway. I wanted to thank you for the hospitality that you showed me in Fort Worth. It was sure thoughtful of you at a time like that to think of me and Bob's comfort, and I guess I wasn't so thoughtful myself. I was kind of tired, just thinking of my own problems instead of yours, and I reckon I was pretty snappy with you. I've been waiting to apologize. Now, I knew Elmer was kind of innocent and trusting, and I knew a woman like that just couldn't be much good. I should have done like you said and gone there with him. Well, I don't rightly see how I could the way she was acting, but I should have done that anyway. Now, if cussing me out'll help you any, or if you want my job, I won't hold any grudge. No matter what you did, it wouldn't be enough. It wouldn't bring Elma back. I never got to know him real well, but in a way I felt like I did. I reckon it must have been because he looked so much like you. I guess maybe that's the one reason I wanted to see you today. It was kind of like seeing Elmer again." We'd come to the airport. He got out without speaking or looking at me and strode off to the plane, moving fast, almost like he was running away from something. He started up the ramp, but he wasn't moving so fast now. Halfway up, he almost stopped. Then he went on, dragging his feet, and he reached the top. He turned around, gave the briefcase a little jerk, and ducked inside the plane. He waved to me. I drove back to town, and I guess I gave up then. I dropped it in their plates and rubbed their noses in it. It was no use. They wouldn't see it. No one would stop me. So, on Saturday night, April 5th, a few minutes before 9 o'clock, but I want to get everything in the right order. I want you to understand how it was.